I'm going to turn it over to Kim Porter, who's going to get us started for this evening. Thank you for being here.
Can I ask if you've attended one of our programs this year, earlier, the other two programs we had? Great. Thank you so much for coming back. You have a really great PTA. Can tell I'm an old home and school president from way back when my kids were in grade school, so I love that you're here and you support your school in the way that you do. I love this district. It's been a really great partnership. And thank you to Damien, and your principal is here, of the middle school is here. Zach, I thank you very much for having us. Tonight you're going to hear from Mike Blanche, but I want to tell you first if you've been here before, you know the way this goes. We have a presentation. You're going to hear from Mike Blanche this evening, and then we're going to take about 15 or 20 minutes to break out into small groups and just have a conversation about what we heard. Kind of to process what we heard, talk about, what brought us here this evening, what we were hoping to learn from this, and kind of formulating any questions that we want to come back to Mike with at the end of the presentation to ask him kind of go a little deeper into some of these things. So we have lots of materials in the back for you. Hopefully we've collected all of your email addresses, whether it was through the Eventbrite registration or a sign-in sheet in the back, so that we'll kind of put you on our list and you'll have access to this page and other pages of information with past presentations. You'll have access to this PowerPoint. This is being videotaped this evening, but only the portion when Mike is speaking. Once we get to the breakout groups and the Q&A, the video camera will not be running, so that'll be shut down. But if you want to share what you heard tonight, it's really great. You'll have not only the PowerPoint, but the full live videotaped presentation. So thank you for that. Thanks, Dustin, our videographer, for the evening. Like I said, lots of great information on our website. This is where you're going to go under events. When you hover over that part of our website, you'll see all of our past events there. You can click on any of those and see these kinds of presentations that you're seeing tonight. Visit our calendar. We have lots more things coming up. We have a program that we're doing. I think we have some flyers back there. On April 2nd, we're hosting a really interesting guy named Ben Court, who's coming from Colorado. The program is called Cannabis is Complicated. It is very complicated. And he's going to try to help us dig in and really learn all we can about it, because our kids think it's completely harmless, and not all kids, but many of them do, and we really need to educate ourselves as parents and educators about this topic. That will be taking place at Ludington Library in Bryn Mawr, again on Thursday, April 2nd. There are flyers back there, but there are a lot of great things coming up, so please check out our calendar to learn more. You should all have a yellow sheet of paper that is our survey. If you don't, we have extra copies. We really love to hear from you, how you felt about this evening's presentation, what you'd like to hear in the future. Hopefully we'll be invited back to visit with you next year, so we really are curious to know what other topics you might be interested in. And without further ado, I would like to introduce Mike Blanche to you. You're all in for a treat. Thank you, Mike.
Thank you. My name is Mike Blanche. I'm a therapist by trade. How many people in here saw the talk on isolation? That was my wife. She's really funny. I'm not as funny as she is. Let's just get that out of the way. When she's really funny is when she tries not to be. Oh wait, this is being videotaped. She'll see this. So I have to watch what I say at this moment. She's really funny. Let's just stop there. So in all sincerity, if you're here to learn about TikTok, everybody wants to learn about TikTok, that is not going to be presented today. When I ask you to come, and I'm really grateful, I've done this many times, when I'm talking about technology, the impact of technology on adolescent development, it's more from a psychological spread. It's not from a direct app spread, meaning, so I'm not going to be downloading a menu of all the different apps you need to look out for. I will talk about a little things about that. So I want to get across, like when I first started giving this talk, this was the drug of choice, Facebook. And now, when my wife actually talks about her profile picture with her adolescent program, they're like, what's a profile picture? That's Facebook. Oh yeah, that's what adults use. And kids are so beyond that. That's such a adult thing. Why do you have to creep on me? So there's a lot of differentials that have already started when I first started giving this talk. Actually, when I first started giving this talk on technology, I used to talk about having your home computer in the middle of a living room. Does everybody remember that talk that you got? So that everybody could see what everybody's going on, and now it's in your back pocket. I don't know if you've ever seen this thing, but this is more accessible, quicker than anything that was ever in our homes before. And so the landscape shifted, our world has shifted, but I don't want parents to be FuddyDuddy. So, is everybody familiar with this clinical term, FuddyDuddyism? The definition is simply this. When I was raised, my parents said that rock and roll music is going to make you do those things. So I'm not going to start this lecture, and I'm not going to say throughout this lecture at all, technology is not the problem. Technology is not the issue. It's how we've integrated it into our lives, how we talk about it as a society, as schools, as families, as individuals. So it's not the issues, just like rock and roll is not the issue. It's how we learn from it, how we adapt, and how we don't adapt. And that's why I'm really standing across from you. It's a real adjustment piece in our world today. I do want to say two things before I get too far. I will go till 7:30, I promise, and then we'll break for small breakout sessions, and then we'll come back. My only differential is I'm used to dealing with adolescents, and meaning I'm used to getting interrupted every 30 seconds. So if you have questions, just blurt it out, or raise your hand if you like. I'm used to your kids' ages talking at me all day long, so please know, if you have questions, I have a lot of material I'd like to get through, but doesn't mean I'm going to get through everything. And again, I really want to land on some solutions for you guys, but I want to start with talking about why it's a complex topic. So without further ado, I'm going to fly through some stuff, but I do want to ask you to say, can you stop me anytime? Yes?
I don't have a question. I just want to make you feel comfortable and interrupt you. Go ahead.
Okay, good. Thank you. Appreciate that. Good, we're good. So I got my first interruption of the night, and so good. Now we're comfortable. Shaking it off a little bit. How many people in here come in tonight with a lot of fear of this is what your house looks like, this is what your kids look like, and how many parents hold a lot of fear around how much technology will affect their development and their brain development? And is this really happening? What does this really look like? Is this our world today? Is this how kids are looking today? And again, this gets to the shift and differential. This was in 2005, the announcement of a pope. Same shot, same perspective, 2013. And our world had shifted that quickly. To give you the idea of the landscape of how our world shifted, that's the first, that flip phone. Does everybody remember a flip phone, a razor? Versus our world, our iPads are getting smaller and smaller and smaller. So the world has shifted. So when we talk about the rate of societal digestion, how long did it take? It took, 38 years for radio to get to 50 million listeners. It took television about 13 years to get to 50 million viewers. It took the internet about 4 years to get to that level. And social media sites about 16 months, and over 500 million within 16 months. So the rate of societal digestion, and we're in the billions now, of all the different Instagram we'll talk about later, but all the different types of social media out there, our world has, again, adjusted when it comes to radio and television. And how many people in here were told the boob tube, that was going to slow you down? I will talk about certain journal of psychiatry that worries about, child adolescent psychiatry worries about from brain development from 0 to 2 and screen time. And we'll talk about that later. But when it comes to, we were raised on that boob tube was going to really slow you down. It didn't. So again, I don't want you to feel like technology, again, is all bad, but it's, again, how we're integrating it, how we're talking about it with our kids. Because how many parents are in here are up against kids saying, well, everybody else does this. So let's fill in the blanks. Every other, it's been the common fight that kids have had with parents throughout centuries. It's just this new topic called technology. And so what's really going on with kids? Is this their life? Is this what they're really looking like? How many people in here have hosted a party? And it's the quietest party ever? And they're sitting all downstairs on their phones? And are they really talking? Are they texting each other? What are they really doing? And where are the concerns? So let me get into some of the concerns when it comes to what, and by the way, the teachers that are in the back or the administration in school, can you agree or disagree with some of the comments that are made? This is a national survey. 67% of teachers observed that students being negatively distracted by their cellular device. 90% of teachers stated the number of students with emotional challenges have increased due to technology. Teenagers who spend 5 more hours a day on electronic devices are 75% more likely to have suicide risk factors than those with 1 hour.
Can Can I pull out my phone and take a picture of that slide?
You can. You will also know, by the way, you don't have to,
Okay.
because all these slides are available on Be a Part of the Conversation website. And this video will be at some point. But the P.S., I'm a huge fan, I just want to say, of Be a Part of the Conversation and Kim's work and their whole team's work. Their website, I literally just send people to every day. They have so much free resources, so many free links to websites, but all this statistics and then the end of where I got all this from, the real research, is already on their website tonight, so you can download it. So when it comes to the exposure, do you agree that this is a big impact on our kids and our development, and how easily they're distracted in class time, in homework time, in social time, and everything else? Any disagree? No comment. Okay. And the other piece that I'll talk about with mental health concerns and the kids with anxiety and depression that already have anxiety and depression, and how and why technology interferes in suicidality, I'll talk about later on. Teens with 5 hours devices are 51% more likely to get 7 hours of sleep when compared to 1 hour use, meaning they're not sleeping. Under 7 hours, I'm sorry. 8th graders are heavy users of social media, 27% more likely of depression, 89% of parents blame themselves. And this is one statistic I want you all to walk out with. This technology piece and the cellular device has come on our hands without much digestion. So I want you to know, I don't want you to beat yourself up. I just need you to catch up, take a deep breath, and attack this at a different angle after tonight. By the way, that movie Screenagers is one of the best. And if you can get a chance, I absolutely agree. Bringing your kid to watch it is a better intervention than listening to Mike Blanche. Because what it does is create a dialogue for you to have with your kids. It's dated in 2 respects, but the rest is so current. It's no joke. It is a great enriching night. So please come out. I've done a lot of follow-up talks to those that night for Screenagers. Know that it's so much worth your time and energy to come out. You'll hear some stuff tonight, but the real piece of Screenagers is adolescents getting interviewed and talking about kids telling their experience about what their exposure to gaming, why they feel depressed, why they feel alone when they're connected. But they're connected, Mike. They're connected. No, they're connected to a piece of plastic that's non-interactive. They don't really see this thing. So I want to get into that in a second. So let me get into that. So why is there a problem with technology? When you would have a bad day in school, please don't, now at this stage of the game, my favor is don't look at my notes. These are just my notes, so please look at me and talk to me. Okay, so I'll turn this thing off if you want me to. So when it comes to, I had a bad day in school, put yourselves back to your 6th grade, 5th grade, 7th grade era. Put yourself back to 8th grade. I would have a bad day in 8th grade school. I would get on a bus, I would get home, and I had 2 older sisters, and one of them would eventually fight and win over the one landline that they would climb in the closet and talk to their boyfriend. And there goes my one sister in the closet talking to her boyfriend in a landline. Everybody knows what that is, right? And then my other sister and I looked at each other, and then I would go down the street and find the one kid, Jeff Cart, and I would go play with Jeff. And then I would come back to home and eat dinner, and then go back to school. And the next day, have a whole new day. And there would be, the best news about middle school and high school is Tuesday was way different than Monday. And Wednesday, well, that was Wednesday, and that was way far away from Monday, right? And by Friday, it was a whole other week, right? Tomorrow, you guys are, this might as well be a Friday, right, in your school, right? Because Friday, are you guys off on Friday? We are. So it's like, woo, here we go, we're there. So when it comes to today, 2020, I had a bad period, 3rd period, and I posted an image to my friend, and then it's on their Instagram feed, and then they retweeted or reposted, and the next thing you know, somebody else tweets about it, somebody else posts about it, someone else takes a screenshot of that and sends it to somebody else, and then by lunchtime, everybody has, group text about what happened in 2nd period, and everybody's worried about what happened to somebody, and there's no process time. And by the time the girls or guys get home from school, they've already had multiple posts about it, multiple screenshots about it, multiple sharing of text with each other, and then some kids with anxiety, some kids with depression might circle back and reread that text or reread that comment or look back and say, how many people commented on my post? Nobody liked my image. Nobody liked my photo. Why didn't anybody like my comments? Does that make sense to you? So by the end of the day, then they go back the next day, and then they're swelled with not being able to let go of yesterday. And they're mentally preoccupied. And again, not every kid, but kids already preoccupied with anxiety and depressive symptoms have that vulnerability that they may be more preoccupied with yesterday or that moment as opposed to letting go and moving on. So when we're talking about adolescent development, one of the skill sets they need to learn is how to let go. I've made a lot of mistakes today, but I've been able to let go and move on. But when kids and adolescents worry about what happened yesterday, or when they're looking at reevaluating their life, let's go move you away from middle school to high school and your dating life. How fun is dating life? Everybody remember how fun and awkward dating is in high school? So let's put ourselves in that queue where you might have had a breakup with Susie or Johnny. And how many times in adolescence do you think I sit across from and Johnny keeps following Susie's timeline, or follows her stories, or follows her Instagram feeds, or follows her Snapchats, and obsessively can't let go of him or her because they're preoccupied with that relationship and they can't let go. Versus our day and age, when we broke up, we might see him in class or school or whatever for a moment and keep fishing or keep going. But these kids now have this device where unfortunately they're not able to detach. And half of my job with adolescents is to help them learn how to regulate this device. So when it comes up to so much multiples of influence, avenues of influence of information, misinformation, we talk about, I don't know if you ever heard of this drug called marijuana, that it's going to be decriminalized, and it's legal in certain states and medical in certain states, and well, there's all this great information online on High Times that you can download for free, or there's a lot of marketing that's out there for free, or you can look up certain things. So there's a lot of dissemination of information without filters, without parents talking, without a setup for impulsivity and not being able to self-regulate because we text and can't wait for that response. Every day I have to explain to a family, especially to a kid, I'm a therapist, I'm in an hour session. If I don't respond to you within 30 seconds, that doesn't mean I don't care about you. That means at the end of the session, I might be able to check in between. Texting and driving has gone up dramatically, and so many kids think they could do it. But these last two cues are the biggest. When I say to someone, how are you doing? What's going on? How are you feeling? And I say it with that tone, that reflection, it feels good, right? When I look at your eyes and you look back at me in my eyes, and it feels like, there's a connection. When I've looked at people, and people look back at me, it's called oxytocin gets released. When I look at my dog's eyes and I look at my kid's eyes, how many people in here have I have a 9-month-old at home, and that look, when I get that moment, it's an amazing high that's released in the brain. It's called oxytocin. It's a real sense of connection. When I say something like, how are you doing? How are you feeling? Where are you at? How you been? That feels okay, right? But a kid, adolescent, is reading a text, where you been? Where are you at? What's going on? My mom is so annoying. She just wants to know how I'm doing. And they miss the context. They mix the tone. So 90% of communication, 87% of communication is nonverbal. How I say it, what I say, the tone, the tonality, the positioning of my body, all this is lost on a text. So when it comes to communication and connection with our youth, so many kids miscommunicate and misinterpret not only the tone and text of what is said, but if there's no response or a response. How many kids, let me ask you guys this, how many parents have taken away your kids' cell phones? Great, good, thank you. You should. All hands should have gone up. That was first failure. Okay, so you will take away your kids' cell phones, and you will continue to do that. But what happens if Johnny and Sally are texting each other, or Sally or Susie are texting each other, the next thing you know, that conversation drops, and Sally goes, what's going on? What happened? And it's just a parent taking away the cell phone. And so many Sallys or Johnnies have gone around going, oh my gosh.
I have a question real quick. When you said that, it made me think of the fact that, I have taken my kids' cell phones, but we got into such a discussion how when you take away a cell phone, depending on how long, you are cutting them off socially, and whether or not it really is a good consequence, because you are cutting them off socially. And that, should it be used as a consequence, or?
Does everybody understand the question first? How did you answer as a parent?
I took her phone away,
Okay.
but then I got a PowerPoint presentation on why you should not.
That is awesome. I'm sorry. That was
Which it was interesting, and
Did they make
it
some good
definitely
points?
made me think
Good. Good.
about, so that the next, I don't know, whatever time I think I didn't take it away, I decided on a different consequence,
Fair enough.
because
I thought your wife at the last one said you shouldn't take it away.
Right.
Right? Okay, all right, I thought it was
For
crazy.
that reason.
Yeah, for exactly that
she
reason.
would.
We blocked out the social messaging and texting, so communication free, you can just call.
Yep.
So when you have, only iPhones, you can do that now.
Yep. Yep. You can actually, God forbid, they actually call somebody.
Reasonable amount of time to take it away. I mean, 24 hours doesn't seem like much, but I think it makes an impact.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. And again, take it out of context, I want to put myself back into context.
How
At the
long-
end, I'm going to
right.
talk about the parameters and what that looks like, so that's a great point. And you got
I was just gonna say, when I took away my daughter's phone, I let her text her friends and say that her phone is gonna be taken away,
Okay.
so they know that she didn't have it, so it's not like she was.
That's perfect. That's great. That's great. Really good. So again, it brings up a lot. So again, as we walk into one simple statement, take your phone, take the phone. It brings up a lot of different pieces around social connection. And what does that mean? And how are we going to connect? And my wife's deal around isolation, her focus when it comes to the mental health acuity that she sees on a daily basis, that I see on a daily basis, she wants to make sure these kids have that timeline, that connection. So it's learning. And by the way, it is a process of when and how to take the phone away, for what time period, what, and defining that, and what that means, I'll get into at the end. I promise I'm doing way good on time. Thanks. But when it comes to nonverbal communication, again, tonality, connection, and I was kidding with the parents saying, God forbid they actually call and talk to somebody. It's not a thing anymore. Like, it's not actually, people don't, like, when I call a kid to follow up, I get their voicemail. This voicemail is not set up, is 9 times out of 10. What I get is a real response. So, and I'm kind of okay with it, but whatever. I don't, and you can look at these numbers, by the way, these numbers have to be updated, but it's one of these things where when it comes to social media, let's just say it's everybody knows social media is a part of their culture, a part of their life. Now again, when I was giving this talk 2 years ago, I was talking about Instagram and Finstagram and them having multiple accounts. That's not a thing anymore today, versus 2 years from now. So again, it's going to shift, and TikTok, I kid it, is a big thing. How many people in here are worried about TikTok? The government's worried about TikTok for China, but there is actually something there. But when it comes to TikTok, 9 times out of 10, it's just kids posting these incredibly annoying songs that are like, 5 seconds long? But like 5 years ago, it was Vine. 2 years ago, it was Medley or Musically. And then it was something else, and now it's TikTok. And 2 years from now, it's going to be something else. So again, I ask parents to not look at the content of the app, but really a conversation around the app about what they're getting out of it. And I'm going to talk about that later. But again, most kids, most social media is on their mobile devices. I think that number's low, 80%. I think it's more like higher than that. And the amount of videos, again, this was 100 million hours of video watched daily. I think that is low compared to what actually kids are doing, and that was a year ago. So again, these numbers have gone up. These are the critical concerns. 55% of teens give out personal information without even knowing. And we've done multiple studies around that. So again, this is the critical concern when I talk about parenting and kids in the internet, is safety. Knowing that how much information they have and knowing how they're putting it out there, how they're putting themselves out there. Again, this number again is pretty low. I think 12 to 17-year-olds send about 167 texts per day. If you think about yes, no, group conversations, group texts, it's an actual pretty low number. 70% of teens hide their online activity from parents. Instagram, yes, is one example, but having multiple accounts, having multiple email accounts. And again, I'm grateful that my father didn't hear every conversation I ever had in my entire life. And I'm grateful that my parents didn't know what happened on certain corners of certain times of my life, right? But again, the only concern, the only differential today is when it comes to this technology, it's documented, there's a history, there's a paper trail or digital imprint that we need to talk about at some point with them. That's the big difference. One of the things that I worry about too with kids is a setup for process addictions. Really, that's one of the avenues and one of the complexities around technology. The same chemical reaction that goes off in your brain when you're playing a video game is the same chemical reaction that goes off in your brain when you're online gambling or you're in-person gambling. The same chemical reaction that goes off in your brain when you're playing a video game or online gambling is cocaine. So when it comes to the neurologic differentials, it's pretty similar to that stimuli family as well as to the stimulation of playing a video game. So when it comes to how many parents are concerned about the video game industry, it is a huge industry that has taken off under our steps, and we just have to be, again, real mindful of it. Some of the elements are okay, some of the elements aren't. And again, certain kids with a propensity to anxiety and depression anyway, that's the kid that I worry about when it comes to this specific venture. But again, process addictions, the kids are set up when it comes to online shopping. And Alexa, we spent a night talking about the concerns around it. You know, parents taking away their cellular device and then using Alexa as a device to download stuff. So shopping and the internet of the illusion of control, thrill seeking, as well as online behavior. The concern around body images on the internet. We used to be up against the perfect image of magazines, and now when it comes to apps, when you're online, a favorite example of mine, I wish I could have this client, her real picture versus her online presence. I couldn't see that they were the same person. There's so many apps that will make your face skinnier, hair thicker, lighter, longer. There's so many apps that are body dysmorphic that we really worry about how body images, and not just, again, media, but social media. So many kids look into that and chasing that external of how they look on their outside. They're supposed to keep up with this image, this look, and codependent on healthy relationships. Again, all this is chasing an external to make your insides feel better. This is a part of addiction. I just want to put this as a backdrop to thinking about it as a whole. So again, these kids are directly impacted by all these different media streams every second, every day. And is this your family dinner table? But we eat dinner together as a family like every night. Do you sit across from them? Do you look at them? And I really appreciate, Damien, you bringing up to not bring your cellular device and be an example to your kids, because is this your home? You know, and so is this the modern family? I worry, you know, when are you paying attention to your kid? Are you paying attention to that moment when it comes to attachment? Or are we getting distracted? And is Johnny happy because he's playing his video game and I don't have to worry about it? Don't get me wrong. I'm a parent of about 30 seconds. My friends will make fun of me. They're saying at some point I'll be doing that at some point when Johnny won't be quiet. But my hope is we don't, but we'll see what happens in all sincerity. So these images are my concern when it comes to families, because these images lead to these images. You know, when it comes to what kids are doing, parents, you're 1,000 school teachers, don't get me wrong, teachers in the room, administration, thank you for your service. But parents, your jobs as you're 1,000 school teachers, and respect kids, watch what you do more than what you say. So when we get to examples of how to intervene with your kids, my first intervention is you. You know, how do you conduct yourself around this device? How are you presenting yourself? Because your kids are watching this while they're doing what? You know, my 9-month-old literally grabs our cell phones. It is scary. So literally, we don't have any screen time. We don't allow the kid to have any screen time. But in all sincerity, that kid has already seen me and my wife on her cellular device. So when it comes to part of the complexities, again, what is a lead up to some of the mental health and substance abuse concerns is fragmented relationships, and fragmented language leads to fragmented relationships, so the lack of healthy relationships and decrease in social support. The language is shifting and changing in the respect that they're not really having full conversations, they're having quick blurbs, and again, modeling behaviors and social cues are lost, and a lot of kids almost, and my wife and I talk about this all the time, there's an uprise of Asperger's, which is real, don't get me wrong, but then there are kids that are diagnosed Asperger's that really have a lot of differentials because they're on their devices so much, they're missing all the day-to-day kind of interactions of the nonverbal cues as opposed to looking at their screens. When it comes to the terms, the desensitization, how many people in here have actually listened to video games online? If you haven't, if your kids play video games, listen. I'm not asking you to play, I'm asking you to listen to how the kids interact. And I say kids mistakenly. Anybody want to tell me what the average age of an online gamer is?
22.
36. So do I want my 11-year-old nephew to have the Xbox Live because he wants the Xbox Live and he wants to play with all of his friends, and he knows all of his friends are playing that one game, and he's 11 and everybody else is 11 is playing that game? And I explained to my sister that yes, the average age of an online gamer has been 36 for a long time. Now, when I first gave this talk about 8 years ago to the state of Pennsylvania EAP's Employee Assistance Program, there was about 70 people in the room, and a bunch of adults raised their hand and were like, yeah, we play video games together. And then when I gave this talk to SAP, the Student Assistant Liaison Program for the state of Pennsylvania, Penn State, there was hundreds of people in the room, and a bunch of adults and teachers were like, yes, we play video games. But, so okay, some adults play video games, okay. But again, it's that certain concern, do I want the average age of an online gamer 34 to be playing? So again, the language, how they talk to each other on video games is really significant. Images, when it comes to pornography and what they're able to download really quickly, and a lot of emphasis has been put on women, rightfully so, but also with men. And I just want to mention that I have to explain male anatomy, that this is not real to some boys that think that this is real. And the violent nature of gaming and the exposure to multiple stimuli, I don't think our culture has really understand the depth of how much this has impacted our culture. Body image issues I talked about, except for when it comes to the term the sexualization of our youth, meaning they're getting exposed to sex before they even know what sex is. So my challenge is to families and schools and parents is, do you want your kids to learn from the internet what sex is, or do they want to hear about consensual participation in a thing? You know, and my point is, there's a really good vignette in this show called Euphoria on HBO that did an amazing job of explaining what sex has as an impact, and I'll try to download that for you. And it's just a quick blurb as a video piece to it as well. And again, the amount of kids that share images of each other and how it could be child pornography, you know, and how many kids get in trouble for that as well. I talked about the video game industry. The one that I always like to explain, Fortnite. Does everybody remember when Fortnite came out? It's a free game. They made $1.8 billion with a B dollars in their first year as a free game, because you can only play so far before you have to buy another level or buy a skin or trade a skin. The next thing you know, in that first free year, that's how much money they made. And so to give you an idea of the scope of it, does everybody remember Pac-Man in 1982? Made about 7 million with an M. To give you an idea. So does everybody remember how great Pac-Man was? And how excited we were to go to that arcade game and put a quarter in and lose a quarter after a minute? That's what a video game is. No. What they do, what Call of Duty is 10 years of identifiable, trackable gamification game behavior, that they have 10 years of audible and visual history on your students, on your kids, that they want 10 years of audible and 10 years of gameplay to make sure that they, every year, make sure you're in a game loop, and the game loops are getting better, and the gamification of youth and how many kids are getting into this game and no idea that they can't get off. So when so many parents come into me and they say, my kid won't get off this game, I say, wait, because the gaming industry is way more powerful than you and me. They have years of research on our youth. They spend more money than the NRA to make sure none of this information gets out, and I get an hour with you guys. So when it comes to, I just want you to be, parents and families to be informed, we call it compulsive loops that game developers are researched on to make sure your kids are not getting off. So that's what I'm trying to get across. And Call of Duty 2 generated $1 billion in their first 15 days. That was their second year. We're up to 10 years of Call of Duty. When it comes to mental health in the industry of just all aspects of gaming, as well as internet, as well as social media, shaming, the derogative statements on a public level, abandonment on a public level, potential re-traumatizations of images I've talked about, potential of obsessive relationships, and I don't know if you know this, principles of exaggeration. Kids lie. I don't know, I hope I'm not the first person to ever tell you this, but kids, adolescents might lie. I don't want to throw them under the bus. Quick example of this is parents I was working with came in, were all upset. They took Johnny's phone, they took his cellular device, and for a long weekend he was grounded, and they kept on getting notifications that his phone was getting buzzed with all these social media notifications, and everybody was making comments on all the pictures he was posting. And then they would go downstairs to the basement to find him sitting downstairs staring at a TV by himself. And then they went upstairs, and then they would get all these notifications on the phone. The kid, greatly stole an iPad and was shoving it on it, and was posting all these pictures that he was pulling off the internet of a party that he was supposedly at. And he was telling all of his friends that he was at this party because he didn't want to be that uncool kid that got grounded. So when he didn't show up at some party, he was showing all these pictures of this other party he was at. So again, kids lie, okay? Let's get that across. Kids may exaggerate. So when kids come into my office and they tell me certain things, I have to think, and I have to slow down, and I have to ask them the questions to kind of get at. And kids always go, you just asked me that question. Dude, you asked me that question like 3 times. I'm like, I did. Because I want to see where they're at with certain ways that they answer. So kids lie because they have this thing called FOMO. Does everybody know what FOMO is? Fear of missing out. It's a serious case of anxiety where they feel like if they don't get to every event, if they don't go to every party, if they don't go to everything, and they see a post that they weren't invited to, they feel crushed. If they see a picture of 4 or 5 kids that all ran into each other at the mall, and they all take a selfie of each other, and they all disperse, according to social media, it looks like they had a planned event, but they think it was, why didn't they invite me? And they bumped into each other. And that happens every day of the week in kids' worlds, but FOMO exists and it really does. The other piece with kids and technology, when it comes to substance abuse, and again, the exaggerator, kids now know what to say about, because I used to deal with kids that would say like, I smoke an 1/8 a day, and I'm like, you smoke an 1/8 a day of marijuana? Okay, that's a little high for those people who don't know. That's a lot, actually, it's a stupid amount. And like, when I would talk to kids, now they kind of have this thing called the internet to look up symptoms or look up dealing numbers, and they look up all sorts of things, so they're a little bit more informed these days, or they know how to ask for a medication from a doctor, so I have to educate doctors a lot of times. And how-to videos, and not just on YouTube, but now there's all these different websites on how to do anything. Websites on medications, blog sites, so they get a source of information around the drug culture. And again, if they're investigating that and you're able to look at their history just to investigate, it would be interesting to see. Insights into dealing, glorification, texting, connections, live streaming. And again, like on a Friday night, the kids, we used to be up against the myth of the party. Did you hear about that party last weekend? We still are up against that myth every now and then, but now we're up against that perfect image. We're up against the highlight reel is what I call it. Because how many people on here are posting, I stayed in on a Friday night and ate frozen yogurt with my mom? How many kids are posting, I'm really happy I made that right decision and didn't go to that party? No one of your kids just to are doing that. So the kids, adolescents, young kids are just seeing the highlight reel and they're thinking that's truth. Does that make sense? So again, we need to educate our families and kids, particularly, what is it? And again, I'm sorry as parents, you guys don't know anything, and I know you probably will hear that sometimes from your kids, but asking them, and I'm going to get into some things what you guys can do. But before that, just a note on couples counseling, I'm not going to get into tonight. But if you're having any relationship issues, yes, I'm not allowed to use this joke, my wife ruined it, that we used to have technology-free night on Tuesday and Thursday nights until recently, but we don't anymore, so yes. There are a list of symptoms to look out for. I want to jump just because of time constraints. Symptoms to look out for if you think your kid has a problem with substances. There's a couple to note. One is staying up online. Another one to not just use as just the only tool, but to think about it. There's an app that'll actually show you the timer of how much you're on this. I love doing this because how many kids aren't the greatest reporters in the world as well? I'm never on my phone. It's what, like 15 minutes a day. I'm like, oh, okay, let's take out your phone. Let's look at the battery life, or let's look at this. Does everybody know that app that you can look at screen? Yeah.
So I was at the library last week because it was a really cool event that the 8th grade did. And I just was standing around, there were a bunch of parents and kids. And I don't know who they were, but these two kids had that open. And they said, man, I've got to step up my game. I only have 33 hours of YouTube this week. And the other kid goes, oh, well, how many TikTok? And he's like, oh, only 9. Oh, you got to catch up. I mean, it blew me away.
Right. Well, the average online and what they're on their device. And if you think about it, how many hours they're in the schools, how many hours they're asleep for, so how many hours are left in the week. You know, when it comes to their devices, and again, this is pretty accurate. There's been some discussion around how accurate it is, so I don't want to take it out of context and look at it as a sole thing. But again, Samsung products as well, you can look through battery life and it'll show you how long you're on the devices for. But again, kids are also looking at it as a competitive thing as well. That's crazy. I won't ask you guys to do it tonight as an exercise, but maybe you could do it at some point and look at your own cellular device time and see what apps you're on and what you're not on. My favorite is, most times, again, this is where the internet's not all bad. I'm on Google Maps getting here. You know what I mean? I'm on, and actually, I don't know if you guys know this, it's a huge anxiety decreaser if I know, like, I left on time and I'm getting here on time and I'm going to get, and I'm like, oh, there's a traffic jam, but I'm only going to be in it for 9 minutes. It's actually pretty cool, excuse me, that I'm like all excited about this like thing that'll slow me down and say it's okay. So again, I'm going to talk about where technology's not all bad at the end, but I want to sneak that in here. So there's a questionnaire about it, but what you can do. We need a plan. You need to create and recreate a culture for screen time with your family. Screenagers, again, great movie. Please come out and watch it. You can provide an initial contract, or you can renegotiate a contract. It can be verbal. It can be written. You can write it for yourself. And talking about digital footprint and goals of what's called digital dignity, because what we're talking about with kids, they don't have an idea that some of the stuff does stick around. Some of these things do get taken out of context, and how we present ourselves today may shift and may change. I'm really grateful that I did not have these social media devices following me around when I was 16, 17 years old. I'm really grateful the limited number of pictures about me as an adolescent, awkward adolescent, truly, is out there. Does that make sense to people? So, but again, talking about their digital footprint, because this tracks. Again, I work with universities, and high schools will tell kids that university admissions will look at their social media. They don't, but I will say this. Coaches definitely do. Scholarship and grants definitely do. NCA, no joke, will absolutely. The coaches will look at your social media presence to see how you will be on the team. And I tell athletes every day of the week, how you are on the field is great. How you are in your home front, your life front, and your digital front. And you have to be conscious of how that all plays out as well. School nights and weekends, by the way, this gets back to that, you know, do I take the phone away or not? With any contract, with any discussion with your kid, it's always best to be upfront about what we're doing, and we're agreed upon. If you do X, Y will happen. So the decisional tree is decided before anything happens. That's where I'm not going to answer, should I take away the phones, yes or no. It's more about if you are acting in a certain way with your cellular device and it is inappropriate, I need to take this away from you for a period of time. And yes, you can send a text out to your friends to say you're not having it. But again, there should be a school night policy versus weekend policy, a weekend versus holiday policy, travel time, because here's the other thing too. One of my buddies is going upstate New York for this weekend, specifically to a place, an Airbnb, that has no cellular service. So he and his family can get away, and his kids can get out of cellular device time, which is amazing. Screen time blackouts, or here's another idea. Yeah, technology-free Tuesday or Thursday nights, but technology-free zones, technology-free parts of your home, technology-free places. When you enter a therapeutic setting, at all of our centers, so I run a program called Ethos. It's an independent, small, intensive outpatient program for substance abuse. One of the serious factors around trauma is for people to feel safe. Sometimes people don't feel safe around technology. Some of our clients don't want our phones or cellular devices in a session because they're afraid people are listening. And it's okay. And I just work with them and say, that's fine, we'll put these devices away. And so we don't have Alexas in the buildings or that kind of stuff. So because of that, because some people worry about that. But having a place and a time for these devices is really good. And the easy one is the battery life on these things. So making a deal with them about where the charging station is. That's an easy one that I tell families every day of the week, especially the younger ones. And again, everybody, including you, everybody's cellular device. Oh no, but Mike, I use this thing. It's called an alarm. You can buy one, $4.99 and pay one. So, this thing is a privilege. It is not an expectation. And how it's kind of like driving a car. I wish. This is one of my sincere wishes, that we were able to get a license to navigate this road called technology. But it's already underneath us. It's already taken off. But to think about it like that, like a driving privilege, screen time safety, again, like driving safety. Think about how they're conducting themselves, how they're coordinating, what they're acting like. And think about it, if you're driving a vehicle absurdly, you lose the right to privilege to drive. That's all. But you can still communicate, you still connect via however you do. But again, learning with kids around safety, especially around predators online. Passwords. That's another huge one throughout high school. And again, I explain to families, I'm not asking you to check every device, every text message. You would go nuts. Again, think of me in my high school years. I'm grateful that my father didn't hear every conversation I've ever had, or you've had. But think about passwords from a safety perspective. A lot of times adolescents, when they get into trouble, their devices may end up places. So you want to have their passwords. You want to be able to get in if there's ever an issue, if there's ever a problem. That's where I'm coming from when it comes to passwords. And again, when it comes to social media behavior and digital footprint, it's digital dignity. I had an adolescent family that the kid was calling the dad out on his digital behavior. He was answering his cellular device in a family session. The dad was saying, this is really important. And the kid was trying to open up. And what the dad was saying was, this screen is more important than what you're saying. Now granted, there was a lot going on in dad's life at the time. Yes, he had answered, but did he have to answer in that moment? Did he have to interrupt that moment? That fractured moment led to a conversation where we talked about digital dignity, and I had each of the family members write a paper around what digital dignity meant and how they are with each other and how their integrity for each other comes first, and this device is the third or fourth. And they really have to watch how they present to other people first, and how they interact with their devices third or fourth. Does that make sense to people? One of the things that I talk about all the time with family members is when it comes to interventions of how to intervene about this thing called technology, communication. It's a conversation that you're going to have multiple ways, multiple times, because it's going to change over time. And don't be afraid to walk into a conversation. And my favorite intervention as a therapist, does everybody remember the show, The Columbo Show? So if you don't remember, Columbo would always end the show. He was a detective, and he would always end the show scratching. For some reason, he'd always scratch his head, and so he would always scratch his head, and he would know 98% of it, but he would want the other person to own it. So he would ask the stupidest questions in the world. And so I do Columbo method every day of the week with my clients, and I get more from them talking about their digital relationship with their phones than I want to talk. So like tonight is the most I've ever talked today. You know, I don't ever want to talk this much ever in my life, except for these talks, because it's really important to get all this information from. But when it comes to, now I'm going to look at my video, I'm going to be like, oh, that was horrible. But when it comes to the therapist, the therapeutic relationship, half my job is to be patient, listen, and wait. And when it comes to parents, you know, listening and waiting for that in, for them to open up, and them to own, and them to describe. That's another huge part of communication is listening. Listening to what their relationship is about, asking them why it's so important, play dumb, get them to tell you why TikTok is an amazing product, get them to fight with you over how much time they should be on their phone, give them a PowerPoint presentation, or let them give you a PowerPoint presentation. That was amazing. Educate and continue to educate yourselves around it. Learn about the app, play dumb, and get them to teach you about the apps. And talk about their friendships online, who they follow, because a lot of kids are following, who are they really following? And again, there are companies that are slotted, that are social media companies that handle the social media kind of channels for these celebrities. And a lot of kids think, oh, I follow Johnny Rockstar, but it's really a team and a whole crew and a whole company that edits and looks at and how they present. And they're like, wow, this is amazing. It's like 4 people that this kid's trying to live up to this myth of a company. That's all. I talked about technology-free time. I talked about putting your cellular device to look at your own family. And I talked about listening. So I want to end on where it's not all that bad. And I'm going to take one more minute, and then we'll go into a couple of breakout groups. Is that okay if I take one more minute? Yes. The idea that technology is not the enemy, and learning how to talk with kids about how connected it can be. As a therapist, at the end of the session, I'm in session at the end of the session, and I say, first off, can I set up our next appointment? And second off, can I text you a reminder of that? And third off, can I text you a TED Talk by Brene Brown? Can I text you a link to a book I described to you earlier in the session? Can I send you a link to an Amazon free download if you like? Can I send you a link to be part of the conversation, to hear some videos or learn some information? Versus when I first started being a therapist, I would say go to Barnes & Noble, awkwardly buy this book, hope that your neighbor's kid isn't going to ring you out when I'm asking you about Patrick Carnes' book called Out of the Shadows about sex addiction. You know? Versus today, I get to send them an anonymous link that moment before they're walking out the door. And I'm able to send them real live information, online Skype therapy, connectiveness to other therapists or other people, lectures, access to research around anytime, more information, more real research, GPS accountability, with kids not knowing where they are, getting lost, shouldn't be an issue, access to information in anonymous ways, monitoring trends, gaining insight and global awareness. So again, technology is here for us, and it's learning how to access it in a healthy way, as opposed to trying to let it define you. I need parents and families to define what technology is for them, as opposed to letting technology define what it is for you. Let me end on that note, and let me say thank you so much. I know I didn't get to everything, and I'll come back for questions at the end. So we're going to pause, and then I'm going to ask Kim to tell where everybody goes. Does that sound cool?